Good evening and welcome to the 6th annual Lea K. Green Artist Talk featuring curator Ryan and Dennis and honoree interdisciplinary artist Vanessa German. My name is Dayon Huff and I'm the Director of Public Programs and Community Engagement here at the Studio Museum in Harlem. On behalf of the Public Programs team, including Melania Graham and Leon Christian, who are running the back and front ends this evening, and the entire museum, we'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, now that your options for engagement include both the digital and in-person worlds again. We are grateful to Steno Captions for providing live cart captioning and Pro Bono ASL for ASL interpretation. Captioning can be activated by selecting the CC button in the Zoom menu bar at the bottom of your screen. During the program, if you feel called to, please feel free to use the chat feature to react, respond, and connect. With the mindfulness that within this space we share that you show kindness, compassion, and respect towards our panelists and your fellow attendees. And before I hand the screen off, I'd like to pose a question first asked by Vanessa. And I ask with a sensitivity to how much we have collectively witnessed, experienced, celebrated, and mourned in just the last few months, years, and days. I say this thinking of Lea K. Green and most recently of the model set by Bell Hooks and Greg Tate, who were just called home by the ancestors. How do you want to be alive? If you could design your life and your day, what would you do? There will be time for more questions and answers after the conversation, so please enter them in the Q&A box found in the menu bar at the bottom of the screen. And now it's my great pleasure to invite our Director and Chief Curator, Thelma Golden, to offer welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dayon. Good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you for our final public program of 2021. We are grateful that you're joining us and appreciate your continued support and dedication to the museum in these continually complex times. This program was created in honor of a dear, beloved member of our Studio Museum family, Lea K. Green, who passed away in 2014. During her time at the Studio Museum as Director of Special Projects, Leah and I formed a bond that was invaluable to me in my first 5 years of director of this museum. And her memory remains strong. The Lea K. Green Artist Talk is a means of upholding so many of the values and ideals Leah believed in, including celebrating artists and cultivating community. We are delighted tonight to honor Vanessa German this evening, as her practice embodies both those values with special love, care, and consideration for the world, and also for her home, the Homeward neighborhood located in Pittsburgh, through her art house, as well as through the making of her artwork and her signature vocabulary, which creates a beautiful power and alchemy out of objects, making them into art that speaks. But Vanessa has also reached out across the digital landscape to create spaces for communion and reflection during these pandemic times through her participatory project, Listening as an Act of Love, Dispatches from the Future. With her tonight, it is a pleasure to have Ryan and Dennis, Chief Curator and Artistic Director at the Mississippi Museum of Art's Center for Art and Public Exchange. Ryan was previously a curator and programs director and public art director at Project Row Houses, in Houston, Texas. Ryan is a dear colleague and friend of the Studio Museum, and we are grateful she will act as tonight's interlocutor with Vanessa in this conversation. I'd like to extend a very special thank you to Connie and Lenny Green, along with Leah's entire family and her many friends. Without your continued support, we would not be here tonight. I'd also like to express my immense gratitude to all of those who have donated to the Lea K. Green Memorial Fund for the last 6 years. Thank you. And now, to share more about Leah, as well as about tonight's speakers, I'm pleased to introduce Lenny Green.
Thank you so much, Thelma, for getting us started. I truly can't begin to truly express how much your dedication, Thelma, means to this annual event and our opportunity to remember Leah and to honor artists of African descent in this way. It means so much to me, it means so much to my mother, and really our whole family. I'm Lenny Green, and I'm really thrilled to introduce Vanessa and Ryan tonight. But I'm also here to tell you a little bit more about my sister, Leah. Leah loved the Studio Museum, and Thelma and her colleagues became her friends, but then soon also became her extended family. So it's so meaningful to be able to continue to honor her legacy with now our extended family here at the museum. Under Thelma's leadership and this wonderful group of people, we started the Lea K. Green Endowed Memorial Fund at the Studio Museum in 2015. This fund, which so many of you have contributed to and been supporting over the years, makes this annual Artist Talk, which is a public program offered through the museum, possible. Thank you all for your support, for being here at events like this one, and for contributing when you can. As we continue to grow this fund, we plan to support other public programs at the museum that are open to the public. In 2016, just to tell you a little bit more about the Artist Talk, we held our inaugural Artist Talk, and we were able to honor Carrie Mae Weems, who was phenomenal. In 2017, we were able to feature Jordan Castile, followed by Amy Sherald in 2018, Dawood Bey in 2019, and Hank Willis Thomas in 2020. To have these amazingly talented artists and generous people be affiliated with this program is such a gift. And we've really kept the excitement going this year. So I'm excited to introduce our guests tonight, who will join us in conversation, Vanessa German and Ryan Dennis. Vanessa German, as you know, who is based out of Pittsburgh, is a self-taught citizen artist working across sculpture, performance, communal rituals, immersive installation, and photography in order to repair and reshape disrupted systems, spaces, and connections. Her practice proposes new models for social healing, utilizing creativity and tenderness as vital forces to reckon with the historical and ongoing catastrophes of structural racism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, and resource extraction. Vanessa has been awarded many awards, but just to name a few, the 2017 Jacob Lawrence Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, in 2018, the United States Artist Grant, and then followed by the 2018 Don Tyson Prize from the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. Her work is held in private and public collections, including the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art, the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, the David C. Driscoll Center, and the Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art. Her work has also been exhibited widely in other museums like the Fig Art Museum, the Union for Contemporary Art, the Flint Institute of Arts, and of course, our beloved Studio Museum. Ryan Dennis, as you all heard, is Chief Curator and Artist Director of the Center for Art and Public Exchange at the Mississippi Museum of Art. Her work focused on specifically African-American contemporary art with an emphasis on socially engaged practices, site-specific projects, public interventions, and development of public-facing programs for adults and youth. Ryan is deeply interested in the intersection of art and social justice while creating equitable opportunities for artists to thrive in their work. Wow, I'm excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity, and I thank Ryan and Vanessa for continuing on with our tradition. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Ryan and Vanessa.
Thank you.
Greetings.
Greetings. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Ryan. Where are you?
I am in Jackson, Mississippi. I am in my office at the Mississippi Museum of Art. Where are you?
I am in Pittsburgh. I'm in Homewood, which is Pittsburgh is 99 distinct neighborhoods. So I'm in the blackest neighborhood in Pittsburgh called Homewood. And this is Haudenosaunee land. This is Seneca Nation land. And I am, for those of you who might not be looking at the screen, I'm a Black woman with a round face and long hair right now and wearing a snake pendant. And there is a very colorful quilt behind me.
The quilt is beautiful. Is that from your mother?
The love of quilts is from my mother. My mother did not make this quilt, but my mother possessed me with the spirit of looking at fiber for its soul, you know.
It's so good to be with you tonight. And I think before we get into it, I just wanted to take a moment to hold space for the loved ones that have transitioned over the last week and few days, specifically Greg Tate and his family, and of course, our beloved Bell Hooks. It's been a year, but we are moving through the year and keeping lifted now that we are guided by two new ancestors, and just wanted to have that moment. I also, of course, I'm so thankful to share space with you, Vanessa, tonight, but also everyone who is joining us in the Zoom room. I also want to take a moment to thank Thelma for her fearless leadership and the love that she shares with us and for us, and the support that she offers as we move through these creative spaces. To Dayon Huff for extending the invitation to me and to us, in addition to your friendship through the years. And I also want to give thanks and gratitude to Melania Graham and Leon Christian for really making this a super smooth operation for us to just kind of jump in. And much gratitude to you all, and of course the ASL interpreters. To the Green family, you all are really wonderful group of women that I met tonight, and thank you for understanding the importance of legacy and building a program like this in honor of a loved one. Leah is here with us, and we honor her and your family tonight. And of course, last but not least, Vanessa, thank you. You are such a gem. And it's been, I've been looking forward to this moment all week. They're like, for me, there are things that I look forward to each week, because it just has to you just have to hold those anticipations. And so I've been really excited to just be with you. And I think before I turn it over to you, I wanted to share a few things, if that's okay. So when we first met a few weeks ago, I've known your work for a period of time, but we had a conversation a few days ago or last week. What is time? What is time? But it felt like our first conversation felt like a jam session, like with musicians, how they just jam. We were just like simpatico, moving, and the conversation just flowed. The hour went really quickly, which is always beautiful. And unbeknownst to me, maybe you, Dayon was taking notes of our time together, and then she shared those notes, and I was meditating on those notes, and there were just a few things that stood out from that, from the notes that she shared. And I kind of sat with them and started thinking about them as creative fragments, or perhaps maybe short poems or affirmations that I think will really ground us as people learn more about you and your work. So I'm going to take a minute to share them. Artist offerings. Coming back to the dialogue, I have faith in us. capacity beyond giving language to, following the listening, place of trust, ecstasy through trust, entangling with the deepest freedom, to feel free, ecstasy of creating the process, romanticizing the everyday, leanings towards the sufferings, and active movement. Acknowledge that difficulty is the space of true release. Letting yourself be able to imagine. Creations of strangulations, identifying and truly recognizing what those are. Being sweeter to self in your heart, holding space, resisting rigidity, the possibility of time, spirit of creativity. Frequency is available. The studio as freedom, as healing. Moving from freedom and daring, cleaning out the cells. No one told them to heal, they were told to shrink. Inheritance. Cleaning the genes of ancestors, the creativity in one's studio, looking into people's eyes to make a poem for them. Vortexes of healing, entering into the unknown with faith. Radical wholeness, humming as a means of self-soothing.
Yes.
Thank you.
How do you feel after reading that?
Calm. I feel grounded, and I know I will return to those highlights over the next course of, the weeks and years ahead of us, because it does feel really grounding.
Yes, I'm really grateful for the space that was made when we came together virtually, but definitely spiritually and in connection. It's not always easy to be in connection, but I do feel like everyone who was on that call, that our heartbeats found the same rhythm together. And it was really special. And I'm grateful that Dayan took those notes and that you shared what you just shared. Because it took me to a place, listening to it, it took me to a place in my soul. And it took me into the presence of my ancestors, into the presence of Leah, into the presence of Belle, into the presence of Greg, into the presence of LaDonna Redmond, into the presence of all of those who we bring with us. When we show up places, we bring like our most present loves with us, and I can feel them all in that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you to everyone who's here with us. Thank you to everyone who makes this program happen. Infinite gratitude and edgeless love to Lea K. Green and to her family, who must know that it is a radiant gift to even be able to say and to hear her name. I feel like in saying her name, some of the robust joy that she got from the Studio Museum and from art and working with artists is like alive in us and adds vitality to, it adds vitality to us, to our hearts and to our bodies. And the spirit is alive, and that is we're fortunate. I thank everyone who is watching, and I thank you from joining wherever you are joining from. And I would like to begin tonight with the first slide. We're going to look at a slide, and then we're going to come back to the screen. Cool? Cool. Oh. Actually, you know what? Let's go back to the screen. My bad. Thank you. I would like to invite people to bring into the chat right now. I would like participants to offer up any words from their heart, any names of loved ones who you are holding space for. Perhaps they are loved ones who need to feel connected, who need to be touched by the vitality of art, by the vitality of creativity. Perhaps they are loved ones who you have lost. Perhaps you want to put your own name in the chat, but if you could please, for a moment, put some ingredients into the chat that will allow me to make a poem, to make an artwork with our connection in this digital space right now. If you put names, you can put colors into the chat, and you can put power, you can put purpose. I'm gonna make a poem for us right now in this moment, in the joy of this time that we are together. And I'm gonna look through them. I'm gonna say some of them out loud, and then I'm going to create a poem. So I see the name Nellie, I saw the name Gloria, Preston, the color gold, Dominique, Green, Poole, Elliot, my father, Harris, Mahmood, Tiffany, Daphne, Shirley, Richard, Turquoise, Peter and my father, Patricia, Love, Abraham and Ruth, Purple, Yellow, Ernest, the sea, yes, the sea, Chucky, Ocean Blue, Red, Mom, Gaia, Mary, Dr. Genetical, yes, Dr. Genetical, yes. I am going to, you can keep pouring these words, you can keep pouring power, and by power you can say that from this moment you would like to bring forth into your life, into the connected reality that we're all in right now, any field or force of grace, love, patience, healing, joy, the spirit of dance, anything that you want and need from this time and space. You can put in there gratitude, healing, confidence, yes, prosperity, abundance, love, joy. Yes, so everyone, scroll through your chat, and voting rights, ritual and routine, grandmother, gratitude, health. Yes, I'm gonna take a couple of deep breaths, fearlessness, tenderness, love, aura, effortlessness, yes, people bridging across community divisions, forgiveness, yes. In the night market of Ife, gathering provision for the journey to a room to join the ancestors, abundant blessings, ease, and rest. All right, I'm gonna close my chat right now, and I'm gonna take a deep breath, and I'm going to pull, and you might notice that I move a lot when I talk and I close my eyes, but closing my eyes allows me to see more deeply that which is infinitely abundant in the place outside of physical dimension, which is all around us. I know that you know and that you understand this place. And this is a practice of deep love. This is a practice of connection. This is a practice of calling up the rhythm and the names and the power and the effervescent force that is continual, that wraps around us, that is in fact the energy of our DNA. I am calling in all of this love, all of this grace, all of the presence and the power and the love and the warmth and the connection and the vitality of every name that was poured into the chat, and every power, and in the presence, the miraculous presence of every color that was spilled forward through text into the chat. And I am going to have my eyes closed. I might open them, I might move a lot. And all of this is the way that I am alive here in this moment. And I do hope that you all give yourself full permission to be as alive as you need to be in this moment, calling into your heart, your loved ones, and the people who most need to feel connected to life and to love in this moment. Let us bring this poem forward for us all now. In this moment, calling up the ocean blue and moving from zoom to zoom to zoom to room to room to room, from cell to cell to cell, this abundant and effervescent spirit of dancing, as though bell hooks is about us right this very instant, prancing and lending her fingers into the very breeze that is moving the trees outside of my window in Homewood, where the little girl Angel is sleeping up the street, this sweet loving being, rainbow becomes an arc out of one place into another, holding ocean blue and turquoise and green and white and everything that we can see with the cones of our irises. This miraculous life alive inside of us this very minute, this pool of grief right next to a pool of joy, this life, this love, this tide, this time for every grandmother, for every grandfather, for every sister, brother, cousin, daughter, for every neighbor who needs to feel connected to the infinite rhythm of the holiest heartbeat of all. Here we are alive inside of the Holy Spirit of creativity, that we have the power within the seed of our soul in this very instant to make a day and a place and a time and a rhythm and a song that finds us whole inside the mirror of one another's lives. This is the opportunity that we have in our hands, in our heartbeats, in our lives, in the rhythm that connects us from eye to eye, to zoom, from room to room to room. I believe that Brother Tate would be tap dancing in this very instant if he were here right next to me. He would be singing the groove along the groove that you hear in the full moon, the light that falls upon us right now, wherever you are, from my house to your house, from my heart to your heart, from this connected force to the connected force that connects us all. We are here and we are alive and we are a light in the spire of fire that is the force of creativity we celebrate every day with paintings on museum walls and also painting on alleyway walls, and in all of the places that we exist. We deserve to be wholly, fully, creatively, abundantly all of ourself. And this is how I will begin this talk today, in a space of expansive wholeness, that we can all step with courage and with tenderness into the expansive wholeness of our own bodies and our own souls. Yes is the word, and yes is the way, and yes is the place. Thank you. All right, loves. We're going to look at some images, and the images are going to take us on a connected journey, remembering that more than one thing is always happening at the same time. And where you might feel disjointed, disassociated, disconnection, there is a connection reaching out towards you. So I ask you, listeners, I ask you, seers of the screen, I ask you, those of you who are in the same city with me, and those of you who are around the world, and those of you who will watch this video in a future time, I ask you to open your heart and to release space of obstacle from your mind. I invite into the room the wholeness of each and every one of you as we look at these images. Connect them to yourself and connect them to your life, connect them to your rhythm and your fire and your story. Let us begin. First image is up on the screen. Miracles and glory abound. This is an installation that has traveled several places. It will travel some more. We begin with this image as right now, I am a fat, Black, queer woman on the land that is presently called the United States of America. This land that never had designs for me to be a human being with freedom or resources. So what we are looking at is a sculptural incarnation of what is often called the most famous painting in America, Lutz's Washington Crosses the Delaware. Only this 16-foot boat is populated with not 12 figures, as is in Lutz's Washington Crossing to the Delaware. This sculptural incarnation is populated with 13 figures. The central figure, the Washington figure, is called LaQuisha Washington. And this installation, this boat, part of Miracles and Glory, a large installation, this boat is called LaQuisha Washington Crosses the Day Aware. In my practice as a self-taught artist, the greatest gift of my life has been the gift of deep excavation into the inside of the inside of the inside of my own self. which is a place that I have been dissuaded from throughout my life from entering. As a little Black girl, I was really warned away from my own curiosities, my own imaginations in school, in my school. Like I was really sort of taught to be afraid of myself. But my practice is really a deep investment into the inside, into the inside, into the inside of my humanness in relationship with my Blackness, my queerness, and my time on this land at this time. So I take this excavation of being, of self, of Blackness, of queerness, of the conscious human being that I am, and I take that excavation into the material world. So I am excavating the world around me for objects that feel right to me. One of the things that has taught me the most in my practice is releasing the anxiety, releasing the place of sort of self-loathing connected to intellectual prowess or lack of intellectual prowess, and really allowing myself to enter into a space where I am in communication with my dimensional self, and I'm able to feel materials in a way that allows me to access their language and their history, the object biography of materials. And I'm really always looking for materials that have a frequency that resonates to me in what I call the frequency of yes. So Miracles and Glory Abound is an installation that recreates a city park, and it's a full museum installation. And what you see here is a photograph that we took of it in a vacant lot in Homewood in my neighborhood. And I was really interested in bringing into this sort of iconic tableau these strange, weird, eruptive, glorious, radiant, wild Black bodies, reinterpreting, changing, turning the boat around. Next slide, please. Also, what I want to say is, if at any point in time you have a question, you should just put the question into the chat, because you could possibly guide us to a place that we wouldn't have gone before. Sharing in these first images, the spectrum of my practice. This is a series of paintings called Black Botanicals that I did during COVID, during lockdown, which was a really special time for me because it allowed me to be in one place at one time and to kind of breathe in a stillness and work in the garden and be with my animals and look inside of myself for what wanted to come out. If I ask you this right now, if you look inside of yourself, what needs to come out of you? All right, what wants to come out? What wants to come through you? Next slide, please. Another image from the Black Botanicals. As I was in lockdown during COVID, I spent most of the time in my garden, and I spent a lot of time in the garden talking to the plants, talking to the animals and the birds. And I really think deeply about the connection that we as Black people, as African people have as earthlings to the earth, and how we have abundant forms of communication through our physical body, through our heart body, through our intellectual prowess with the natural world, and how it is a gift that we have that no one, no law, no order, no system can take from us. But what can happen is that deep connection can become submerged. And I'm interested in bringing forth the technologies of our soul, in undrowning the deepest, truest technologies of our humanness and our soul. Next slide, please. Another image from the Black Botanical. Investing, one of the little girls in my neighborhood, seeing my work, she would ask me, Miss Vanessa, why is everything that you make so Black? And she was a dark-skinned little Black girl. And I paused when she asked me that question. And what I told her was, I was just trying to make the most beautiful things that I could. Next slide, please. So I live in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh called Homewood. It's a neighborhood that a lot of you would recognize. And working as a teaching artist in my neighborhood, I was always with students who really believed that the real world existed outside of Homewood, that they couldn't dream in Homewood, that they couldn't be safe in Homewood, and that oftentimes they would be like, have a sort of like street cred of being from Homewood, but there was always this idea that real things happened outside of Homewood. So one of the things that I would do for my students to bring them into connection with the power of themselves wherever they are is I started to make these t-shirts, and I would just give them away. And what was really wonderful about this day with this young man, we had his table set up at this, going back to school day, and people were making art and I was giving away t-shirts, is he was walking with this group of his friends, and they were like scowling and they looked a little scary. I gave this dude a t-shirt and he made the biggest smile, and it was as though his smile like cracked open a portal, and the whole all the energy around us shifted. And I'm deeply I feel so deeply connected to human beings. Sometimes it's a very awkward thing because I'll look into people's eyes and I will speak very clearly to their hearts and to their souls. But I really am so honored to have moments where that connection and that sort of spark jumps back at me. Please, may I have this next slide? Oh, y'all, look at this. These are my ancestors. Sometimes when I'm in my studio and I feel like I'm going crazy and I can't find the material that I connect with to move me next, and I'm disconnected in my heart, disconnected in my mind, if I'm in my studio and fear is with me, and the fear that I am, any of the small to big fears, and I feel like I don't want to ask too much of my ancestors. This is a weird thing, but I'll go into a place of prayer. And there are times when I can feel these 4 women around me. And it wasn't until I went to the matriarch of my family like 4 years ago, and she pulled out this photo. And I was like, oh my God, I recognize these women. They are the long skirted women who sometimes put their hands on me when I'm in my studio. And my studio practice, I was told by actually a Black curator really early in my time of sharing art publicly, I was told not to tell people that I experience ancestral presence in my studio. I was told not to tell people that what I was working with materially was love. I was told not to do that. Somebody told me, they said, people will think that you're hypersensitive and they won't take you seriously. They'll think that you're just like some black magic, woo woo, foo foo, she stuff. And anyway, I don't listen to that person. I tell people what happens to me. And I am never surprised when people say, listen to what happens to me. Listen to how I am in relationship with my ancestors. Listen to the presences that are a part of my studio practice and a part of my work. And I feel like it is a great gift to have this time on this talk right now to say yes to you, into the spaces, into the mysteries, into the brilliant and heartfelt unknowns that you engage with just to be alive in this world. I affirm your magic. I affirm your love. I affirm the ancestral presence that moves with you. And I affirm your right to take up space and speak those things out loud. Okay, next one, please. Oh, look at this, homies. I take kids from my neighborhood. One of the things that I started to do, which was super subversive, is people would always want to have meetings with me and want me to go to meetings. And so I would tell people, I'll take a meeting with you if you come to my house and you sit on my porch, knowing that the kids in my neighborhood would have like this Vanessa radar, and they could feel if I was on my porch, and they would totally disrupt any meetings that I would have and just start peppering curators and photographers and everybody with questions. And I would let kids like co-opt my meetings. I let kids totally co-opt a meeting I had with PBS, and it was amazing. And I would just start taking, like whoever was on the street. And there were, in my neighborhood, one of the things that happened because of the art houses, I would have mothers in the neighborhood come to my house and say, my child is always asking to go somewhere with you. I want to let you know, if they want to go somewhere with you, Miss Vanessa, they are welcome to go with you. They are safe with you. They don't always have to run home to me. Just let me know. And so this one day, Zoe, I had a residency at the Glass Center, and I took her to the Glass Center with me. And I got a call while I was at the Glass Center that the SWAT team was at her house, that they were pulling somebody out, and that it was a serious situation. And I was like, oh my God, I have this woman's child. Like, should I take her home? Because they took everybody. The police took everybody. And I was like, oh my gosh, what should I do? So people at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which is one of my favorite arts organizations in Pittsburgh, I had to tell them, I was like, I can't leave right now. There's this situation. And I have this little girl, and they bought food for her, and we hung out and we did all of this work. And I made this sculpture called Miss Vanessa and Zoe Go to the Glass Center. And for me, for her to see that I made a work based on our adventures, for her to see that I made a sculptural incarnation of her, for her to see that she meant so much to me, that she became this force, in my work, is something that was really special. I'm very interested in creative spaces and the awakening that comes from them. So I love this work. Turn to the next slide, please. This is my mother's quilt, Ryan. So my mom's quilt is here. My mother died 7 years ago. My mother was a quilter, and my mother raised us in Los Angeles. And my mother, we were really strange kids. Wherever we went, people are always like, oh, those kids, they're weird, they're different. And that was something that was really painful to me when I was a child. But what I understand now, well, one, my mother was a genius. My mother spoke like 7 languages, and she was an activist. My mother was one of the college students that the police handcuffed and put in that U-Haul van in the hot sun in Wisconsin on what they call Black Tuesday. My mother was one of those students. And my mother raised us to be artists and activists. My mother raised us, she didn't raise us to go to college. My mother wasn't one of these women who was like, you got to go to school, you got to get a scholarship. My mother raised us to be awake in the world and to be alive inside of ourselves. So she raised us, she taught us to read when we were very young. And she took us to protests. So there's a picture of me from the LA Times when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I'm holding a sign that says US out of El Salvador. And my mother raised us to be loud. She raised us to be able to tell our own stories. And one of the gifts that my mother gave me was a love for women. All of my mother's friends were women. My mother was friends with Octavia Butler. I remember all these women being around a table and listening to Octavia Butler speak. And it seemed like her voice was so deep, it would rattle the dishes in the china cabinet, because my mother would meet with women in a circle around the dining room table, and we were not permitted to eavesdrop. It was this like really sacred space, and there were all these women who sort of scared me at the time, because I knew that I didn't have the capacity to be in conversation with them. But my mother really loved women. And when I came out to my mother, when I told my mother, I was like, Mommy, I'm gay, I'm not gonna date boys. My mother said to me, that's fine, Vanessa. She said, there's not much that a man can offer you. and my father was like, what? But my mother had Black Madonnas in our house, and the Black Madonna became a really healing force and vehicle for me. Next slide, please. Yes, so from that Black Madonna before to me holding 2 little girls at the Art House. The Art House is a place in Homewood that was born out of I was squatting in a building that had been abandoned by the landlord, and I would make art and kids would watch me, and I would start to share with them. And I eventually went from making art on my front porch to borrowing a house from the low income housing agency. And I would have this experience when I would share art supplies with kids where, they would come to my house. I would just put art supplies all over the porch, and they would say, Miss Vanessa, what are we supposed to make? And I would tell them, yo, like I'm working, like this sculpture that I'm working on, this is work for me. Your mother is an accountant. I'm an artist. This is my job. I have to do this. So I can't tell you what to do. What I can say to you is that the first thing that you need to make is a decision. You need to decide to start. And I would tell the kids that. I would say, like, do you need to make something for school? You can work on a school project. Do you want to say thank you? Do you want to make a card? But you need to make a decision. And one of the most amazing days I had on the porch, when it was just me and a bunch of neighborhood kids on the porch, is this little girl was the first person there, and she hears the make a decision speech, and then other kids would come and they would think that it was a class. They would be like, Miss Vanessa, what are we making today? And I'd be like, and they'd be like, Miss Vanessa, what are we supposed to do? And I remember this little girl turn into these kids and she goes, you need to make a decision. You need to decide where to start. And it really took me aback. Because I was like, oh, I don't have to keep replicating this message. It is a true thing. And the truth is living inside of them. And they replicate the message. And this one day at the art house, there were just these two little girls. And I tell you, they talked my ear off, man. You get in a room and it's just you and some little kids. And I realized that that was one of the gifts of the space of the art house, that kids could come and be themselves and be in connection with their own voice and connect their voice to material in a way that wasn't connected to an assignment, but that grew from literally inside of them. Because I would never tell kids what to do. I'd be like, yo, you got to make a decision. You got to start. I can work with you, but this is yours. You are yours. And I love this picture so much. And I want to talk for a second about what we call community work. Because I'm asked to talk about community work all the time, as though it's like this romantic, fantastical, like Black girl Jesus lifting up the hood type of Lord of the Rings like experience, this like vast epic. And I want to say that none of these kids live in the neighborhood anymore, that there was a wave of evictions that really ripped through families and like tore families in a way that I'm not sure people are used to seeing. And none of these kids are around anymore at all. And one of the things about working, consciously with love is you have to constantly navigate letting go, constantly navigate grief. All right, can you turn to the next slide, please? This is just, what I want you to look at on this work is all of the skirts on these pieces are hand-blown glass vessels that are filled with prayers that people sent me from around the world. When I do a work like this, I post on social media and I invite people to write their prayers, to write wishes, to write anything. And sometimes, like I remember one woman wrote me and she was like, Stephanie is my daughter and she has cancer. And I would write that on a piece of paper and I would put it in a sculpture about healing. And I'm really, honestly, without myth and without fantasy and without romance, deeply connected to the technology of my soul, activated through intentional consciousness, becoming material form as a sculpture, as an assemblage. Next slide, please. Yes, so about connection and being on this land that we call the United States of America, I spent a lot of time at Standing Rock. And before I spent a lot of time at Standing Rock, I spent a lot of time in the street. I spent a lot of time at protests. I spent a lot of time staring down police in riot gear. I spent a lot of time being mocked by the police. I spent a lot of time like screaming in the street. And when the young woman who had the vision on the top of the hill at Ochedi Sakawoan and near Standing Rock asked for people to come to the land, I was like, wait, like, are we protesting? Are we yelling at police? And she said, no, just come. And that to me was my first entrance into a protest that simply involved my wholeness, that it was, she said, just come and be on the land. And your presence on the land alone is it asserts your presence on the land alone in your wholeness, in connection with us all, is the thing itself. And the first time I felt that was at Standing Rock. And this is an image that I took at Standing Rock because I was incredibly humbled and moved every day to be there. And I really took careful notes in the journal of my soul upon that which it is to be welcomed into a space and to be welcome on land. And this is something that I take with me because I'm in museums all the time and I do not often feel welcome. So I have to have a lot of conversations with museum professionals about welcome and what that is. Next slide, please. These are me venturing into the connection with the Black Madonna that my mother gave me. These are Black Madonnas that I painted on the Constitution of the United States of America. And one of the things I'm doing with painting Black Madonnas, one is I had to spend a lot of time with my mom in the cancer center, in emergency rooms and in hospitals. You know, you just like 8 hours in a cancer center. And I started painting Black Madonnas on toilet paper, paper towels, on anything, because the practice of painting the sacred Black figure returned to me the sacredness of my own Black figure. So this is a deeply medicinal, restorative practice for me of painting the Black Madonna on anything and everything, and giving myself the space and time to heal the scars of self-loathing that are within me, that are, you know, we're literally part of the Constitution of the United States, that we were not whole, and taking over and taking up deep space creatively. Thank you. Could you turn to the next slide, please? Yes, I do not trust the police to recognize my humanity. Last summer, Necessities, I began painting all of these t-shirts, and they were painted very immediately. I would just like take out a blue pen and I would just work on them, because I had a friend who lived in New York, a young queer Asian artist, and they told me that they had so much grief, they didn't know if they could go to work. And I said, well, let me make you a t-shirt. And I made them a t-shirt that said, I am grieving, but I still had to go to work today. And I wanted to make myself a shirt that could possibly give the police pause before they would make violence against me or my body, which is something that has happened to me before. I do not trust the police to recognize my humanity. And perhaps that would, yeah, could y'all put in the chat what t-shirts you would like me to make for you? If you need a t-shirt that is a necessity in your life that you want to move in the world with, please put that text in the chat for me. Next slide, please. Oh, look at that. That's a fat Black girl leaping into the sky at the Great Salt Flats in Utah. I took images of myself. I drove from Los Angeles to the East Coast and all across the country. I took photos of myself flying over America. And this is one of the images of me flying at the Great Salt Flats in Utah. Again, this is this place of finding deep connection, excavating, going to the inside of the inside of the inside, thinking about what Anish Kapoor said about sculpture and about art, how he said, like, the next place that you can go is scale, 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 scale. And I took that seriously. And what I look at as the largest place of scale for my practice, it is my entire life. And it is not only my entire human life, it is my entire consciousness and every consciousness that is connected. Can you talk more about making these objects art as amulets? I am going to do that because we're going to get to some. Chris, I see that we're going to get there. Next slide, please. I hope we get there. We'll get there soon. The Blue Walk is a community ritual that allows us, next slide please, to take up space with our bodies in blue, and give space for our grieving, for our love, for our wailing, because we know that there is much blood, much pain, many screams that are trapped in the land. And next slide please. And we take this ritual. I've done it all across the country. We invite people from the community. I ship in all the blue clothes, and we meet with whatever community members want to meet with us. And I take them through the ritual, and then we take the ritual onto the street, and people can follow us and they can join us. It's called the Blue Walk. This is a hoodie that I made that has 300 silk ribbon roses on it, and it's called A Hoodie to Grieve In. And I made it after I just was sort of, my tongue was tangling, stuck in the back of my throat from grief, and I couldn't, I didn't feel like there was enough salt in the world for me to like shake the grief out of my body. And so I began to make garments to grieve in. Next slide, please. This garment to grieve in is taken in front of the Frick Museum. This is an immersive installation called Grief in Life, Ritual and Reckoning. And it is at the Frick Art Museum. I am really thinking about all of these opportunities for people to see, experience my work immersively, dimensionally, as opportunities to call up the technology of their soul and to awaken the technology of their soul. Because I do not believe, I no longer have full faith that we will have a radical future or that we will have revolutionary justice without accessing our place of soul, without accessing the deep technology of our own soul, which is awakened through, which can be awakened through experiences with art, with artists, with poets, with thinkers. And I then, in moments when my work is shared, the invisible ingredients of love and soul, I am asking very intentionally to go inside the being, to go inside the inside of the inside of a being, and to awaken in ways that I would not be able to form language to do. I ask the love, I ask the soul, I ask consciousness to do that in any proximity to sight, sound, or touch of the work that I create. Next object, please. Also an image of the artist looking at, the artist observing the art. Next slide, please. This is my grandmother and her hands. My grandmother's father built a church in Louisiana called Sweetwater. And my grandmother remembers most things from her youth, and she remembers the songs that she would sing, and her soul knows and is in deep connection with the songs that her mother sang. And I think about my hands, and I have a poem called If My Hands Were Anything Other Than Hands. And the first line is, if my hands were anything other than hands, they would be two shooting stars galloping light across the galaxy. And I know that even though my grandmother never prayed that prayer and never sang that poem, that her hands are two shooting stars galloping light across the galaxy. And her hands, though she was a nurse and though she was what she called a domestic, where she made somebody else's life livable in their house, my grandmother makes art through my hands. Next slide, please. So I can talk about making objects as power figures in these next bodies of work. I have a show up at Transformative Arts right now in Los Angeles, California, a space that is Black woman owned and Black woman run by Jill Moniz. The show is called The Artist Channel's 33 Intimate Technologies of Soul. So I experienced a lot of grief and injury this year, and I went to Los Angeles to heal, not bringing any art supplies with me, which was foolish because my ancestors told me, like, this is your life. This is what you will do. You will build, you will weave a basket in the dark. You will create, you create. Even if light isn't on, you will create. And so I was staying in an Airbnb in Santa Monica, and I just asked the woman, I said, hey, can I get a couple power tools? I'm an artist. I'd like to make some things. And she said, yes, make stuff. You can do that. And so she said, just, make your little wood shop outside on the deck. And I began to make these small technological devices of consciousness and soul. And what I would do is I would sleep in the same room with all of these materials. I would dream into these materials. I would meditate into these materials. And I'm asking of the entire process to relieve the deep congestion that is in my heart and that is in my soul, to relieve any confusion, but then working deeply medicinally, deeply pharmaceutically with every object and making space for wholeness, for connection and wholeness. And so one of the things that I have been deeply disconnected from was my own rage, deeply disconnected from the fact that sometimes I want to use my hands to harm, but I never gave space to those things inside of myself, because I'm like, oh, Vanessa, you believe in love, you believe in care, you believe in all these things. But what I realized is everything needs space, everything needs breath. And so what I would do is work through imagination, through consciousness into the object by touching the material consciously with prayer and constructing things in a space of 100% trust, bringing forward the most abundant material that we have as human beings, which is our consciousness. Next slide, please. So inside of this is another one of the devices from Intimate Technologies of Soul. Every object has something to do. Each material in the object is there for a reason. People are always like, Vanessa, well, some people say you just have everything but the kitchen sink in your work. And I say, no, but if I had the kitchen sink, it would be there on purpose. And I had somebody in an artist talk ask me next week, like, they're like, don't you think that there's like this sort of way that Black artists are diminished by this idea that you're making artwork to heal, that you have so much trauma that you need your practice to heal. It's all healing, it's all this. And I say, that is like abundantly human, right? Like if you chase back cultures and art making and decorative arts or anything, like this is one of the ways that we are alive, by putting our consciousness, by putting power, by moving force into objects around us. Next slide, please. I am a queer woman, and this is an artwork that I made in celebration of loving bodies of all shape and all size. And this is an intimate technology of the soul. So this is a device of transmutation. This is a device that in any proximity to this artwork, it awakens in you the place of accepting and loving yourself in deep wholeness, and removes any boundaries and any places of rigidity and judgment that you would hold against other human beings and their bodies and their shapes of love. Next slide, please. Another intimate technology. This is inside of this auto race game, there is a special line that says the black ball counts as double. So if you hit the black ball, you get more points. And this work is a transmutation device to transmutate rage and the viciousness of white supremacist delusion. So by being anywhere in proximity of this device, it awakens in you the power and the capacity to turn your scars, into places of luminous and radiance that make deep space and acceptance and connection with you and every ingredient of your wholeness. Next slide, please. Another intimate technology. I won't speak in detail about it. Next slide, please. I am thinking a lot about tenderness, and I'm thinking a lot about Black boys and tenderness, and thinking a lot about Black boys and tenderness in the imagination. How would you cloak yourself in deep tenderness if you had full permission and full agency without any fear of violence being met against your capacity to stretch yourself wildly in glitter and wildly in shine? Little Black boy, what would you cloak yourself in if your task was to cloak yourself in tenderness? Next slide, please. A woman at an art gallery that I had a show at, who owned the art gallery, said to me that she understood how Black people feel when the police accuse them of doing things that they didn't do. Whenever the police kill a Black person, I hear that woman's voice in my head. And so this is literally a technological device to shift that pain and the echo of that white woman's voice in my head, telling me that because I asked her to make something right with a Black woman who was ignored in her space, that I had done grievous homicidal harm to her. So this turns that around so that I do not have to live in the echo of that. And I also think a lot about microaggressions. I also think about how much we ask Black folks to just be strong and resilient and push stuff past them. But I say, no, I say that you have the right to be where you are and to tend to your places of wounding in ways that for every wound that has been inflicted against you, it becomes within you the force to rise up and to levitate and to move on from that space. But I have space and time to hear what has happened to you. I hope that you have space and time to hear the stories of what have happened to your people. I hope that you're listening to yourself also. Next slide, please. Yo, we're back in Homewood. So I'm thinking about this, right? I'm thinking about this place of excavation, of being in deep connection, of accessing radical wholeness as a true revolutionary act of justice, that we can be whole here on this land and every land, right as we are. And in my studio in Homewood, I have a very small studio. I never have enough space to walk fully around a sculpture, a single work of art in my studio. So we take things out into the alleyway. I bring art outside of my studio into the alleyway, into the street a lot, because we have the most amazing conversations with people. And this is Zoe, who was rolling up the street in her bike, and there were these power figures that I made. Whenever I make a power figure that has wheels, it means that it is almost like a rocket ship type of vehicle that has the power to move something very swiftly into the direction of its defined purpose. And I love that we built such a relationship with art making and our neighborhood as a place of making, and our neighborhood as a place of exhibiting, and our neighborhood as a place where we found the resources for our art, that became an infectious force, that all the kids in the neighborhood thought about our place differently and thought about the resources of our place differently. Next slide, please. Yes, love, yes. So another image from I Come to Do a Violence to the Lie. Next slide, please. I shoot a series of photographs called The Blacks, and this is Brian Broom, the author who wrote Punch Me Up to the Gods. And it's an image outside the garden in Homewood. And just one more slide, Ryan. The police stopped me and Brian after I took that picture, and they humiliated me because I had all these cameras, and they were like, "You're shooting, why are you shooting?" And they sort of made me stand still, and they made Brian stand still. And Angel came up to us after that. I was about to cry. It just really felt really violating in that moment. And Angel came up to us, and she sort of brought us back to a moment together. And in this togetherness, I bring Ryan Dennis back into the conversation. And I thank you all for your patience, because I have a lot to say, and I'm grateful that you listened and that you shared your family's names and colors and all those things that I asked for. So, hey, Ryan.
Hey.
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 How you doing? You ready? You ready?
Oh yeah, I'm so good and full, and I could literally listen to you all night and continue to learn from your images. You're such a beautiful, whole spirit and woman, and I just thank you so much for showing up. And the work that you make is so layered, and I think we talked a bit about like separation, and I love that there's no separation in the works that you presented today. They are in fact so wholesome. And I just wonder if that, I don't know, you call yourself a citizen artist, and I'm thinking a lot about how the kind of connectivity of all of like the materials that you use, the activism that goes into, you as an activist, like you calling yourself a citizen artist, how does that show up within your making? Is it like a call to action for you?
the reason that I call myself a citizen artist is because I made the conscious decision at the cliff of life and death that I wanted to truly inhabit my entire humanity through art and through creativity. The beginning of the definition of a citizen is to inhabit. And so I took that seriously as a call to really consciously, intentionally, and with deliberate consciousness, decide how I want to be alive. It's that question that Dayan said, like, how do you want to be alive? How do you really want to be alive? How do you want to be alive? I want to be alive. And so all of those images, from seeing my mother's quilt to Brian Broom in the alleyway to seeing kids from the art house, it might seem like I could have talked about community over here, and I could have talked about sculpture over here, I could have talked about photography over here, but what you experience is that there is no clocking in and clocking out. There is no community work from 8:30 to 4:30. Mm-hmm. There is no experience that I have that is not illuminated through my creative consciousness. And I lend myself to that all the time. It is how I am alive. And I'm interested in imagining a world where every human being feels like they can live in the power and inhabit their power fully and wholly, without violence and without apology. So it is intentional that when I talk about my art, we are in a flow. It is intentional in my practice that I allow myself to listen so deeply to myself that I know the seasons of time that I'll be painting. I know the seasons of time that are photography seasons. I know the seasons of time that are object gathering seasons. And I want a world where human beings are not afraid to inhabit themselves fully, completely, with love and with tenderness. That's the world I imagine.
Okay, there are a number of questions that are coming in, but I have two.
I want your questions.
I have just two for you,
and then I just really want to say thank you for your grace, Ryan. Thank you so much for offering me the grace to speak the way that I speak about my work, and to do that. Like, you actually really made the space for me to show up whole here, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that artists get to work with you too.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. And I'm also very glad you did not listen to whomever came in your studio and said, don't show up with spirituality.
They did. They did. That was very interesting. Yeah. All right. What's your question?
Okay. Two more questions, because I want to be able to have our participants engage with us too. Which is one question: How do you really keep on dreaming in the midst of devastation? And devastation in terms of just life, what life is, devastation. I mean, life is beautiful, life is, joyful, etc. But it is hard and it's heavy. And we come to, we come with full selves to work or home, etc. And I'm just wondering how that practice of dreaming is sustained for you.
So a couple of things it sustains dreaming for me. One, death is a part of my practice. I am in relationship with death. My death is always death is walking with us. And so I have had a radical shift in how I hold death since my mother died, and since I've experienced, there were several people who were murdered outside of the art house. So me and the kids had to witness some things, and I found that the parents didn't want kids to talk about sad things. I would literally hear parents say, "Don't talk about that. That's sad. You're a little kid. Be a kid." And so we would be at the art house, and I realized that because we experienced devastation, and it was like very difficult, and I was not prepared for some of the things that happened to us. But what I realized is that we had everything that we needed with each other to navigate. And what we had was a space. We had a place where we could create, and we had the ability to talk to each other. So one of the things that helps me through devastation is not running from it, not hiding from it, not putting frosting on it and acting like it's a cupcake instead of devastation. There is a way that the infinite resources from my soul will show up when I can just be with what is. So there's a space and time where it's just like, I just am going to be here. And I'm a very sensitive person. So sometimes being here, being in a place of feeling, being in a place of resonance without a lot of guidance, because, you know, we come from people who had rituals of guidance through times of devastation, be they natural devastation, or be they the ordinary devastation of the fragile human body, you know, in this world. But we come from people who had ways of guidance through that. And in the world we live in right now, we are a lot of times disconnected from our ways of guidance. And so one of the things that I do is when I am with people who are expressing any devastation, I look them in their eyes and I listen to them. And I ask them if they want to share. And I don't tell people to stop crying. And I don't say things like that. And I give myself space. Like, I spend a lot of time alone. I remember talking to Julie Dash, who made the film Daughters of the Dust. And I was like, how do you do it? How do you be in this world? Like, I feel, you know, sometimes like I do not want to live anymore. And she said, I spend a lot of time alone. And at the time I felt like I should be more social and I should be all of this. And I was like, and I took her words into heart. And I cry a lot. And I seek deep affection with my friends. Like, I'm the type of friend who I hold my friends' hands. I like lean on them, and I actually receive support from their bodies. And I let my dear friends know, like, if there's a new friend who becomes dear, I will say, this is the way that I need to be alive. Like, I will need to touch you. I need to hold your hand. Or sometimes I will, I put my cheek up against my friend's cheeks. And what I found is that I want to make a space of permission for all of the people I love to include me in their tradition, into their rituals through devastation, because I think the thing that I learned most is that we have each other and that hiding does not serve us. What about you? What's it like for you?
Oh, gosh. I meditate a lot.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And so I think the dreaming comes through when I can quiet my mind and just like sit with my feet in the grass of my backyard, in the soil that is Mississippi right now. I think the kind of dreaming comes when I can be in nature. But also I think dreaming comes a lot when I can look in the eyes of my daughter right now. You know, I am moving and navigating, I think, in ways that are just so beyond me. And so I think the kind of connection with my child, and then thinking about ancestors, those that are, you know, past, but also, you know, individuals that are living, I think that just continues to make the dream worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I have a dear friend who you remind me so much of, her, and who actually used to live in Pittsburgh. So I would not be surprised if y'all don't know each other, but her name's Sister Asada Richards, and she talks a lot about being close. And when I first met her at Project Row Houses, I think one of our first interactions was me walking into the two-story, which is the corner house that we called the two-story, and Asada just ran up and gave me a big hug. And I mean, we did not know each other. I knew of her in various ways, and maybe she knew me in a kind of distant way, but she would rub her soft, beautiful cheeks on mine, and that felt really like really grounding. And I do definitely love, touch. Yeah, we talked about a few weeks ago too about just touch, which allows for dreaming too, and how we come into this world needing touch, and so with has created distance, and it's not part of your everyday. Like, how can you imagine? How can you like keep expanding when touch is not present?
Speak it.
Yeah.
Speak it. Yes.
Just
yes.
That's
I can like I can pull a thing up through my soul, right? Like I can pull. So I feel like I'm always in a state of dream. Like when I, they would ask me at the therapist, they'd be like, they take you through the DSM and they're like, do you see things? And one day I told them the truth. I was like, yes, I see things. And they were like, wait, we might have to go to another level.
Not ready for that.
Because you see things. And they said, what do you see? I said, sometimes I'll look in the corner of a room and I'll see a completed sculpture and it's not there, but I'll know that I'm supposed to make it. It's like the sculpture is calling me from the future and we have to meet each other in the present moment with the materials. And they were like, but that's not real, right? And I just let them think that. But I feel like I'm always in this place of dream, but because I am always in that place and I have like very close access to this other place, touch is so important to me. Like I was performing at the Shape of Things with Carrie Mae Weaves at the Armory, and I made poems for people and I got off stage and one of my friends was there and I said like, oh, I have to hold on to you. Like I will have to physically be grounded in touch with another human being for at least 45 minutes after I do something like that. And I'm so grateful that I have friends who understand that.
Okay, last question before we turn it over to the audience to, a little bit. So let's see, I'm thinking about this occasion. It's the close of the year, and I'm just wondering what you're also like looking forward to in 2022.
I'm looking forward to creating more boundaries around my studio practice, like not answering the phone, not like having more, because I really need to have long interrupted stretches of work. So I'm interested in finding a studio assistant who has we have a match and enough capacity that somebody else can do that so that I don't have to split my mind. I'm looking forward to falling in love again. If somebody wants, anyway, that's just
Call it out. You're manifesting.
I'm looking forward to love and to loving. I'm looking forward to the art house caught on fire in February. And because of COVID and everything, the house is next year is going to be a big time of repair and a big time of bringing all of these new movements together for the art house and around. And so that is an exciting thing to watch the art house be rebuilt and to see the exciting things that are connected with that. That's really exciting. And it is also really exciting for me to keep alive a space of creating a home of joy and of comfort, of softness, of tenderness, and a place of heart. So of making a new home for myself. And I'm really continuing working with consciousness as a material.
That's beautiful. And I'm sorry to hear about the art house, but I'm also happy to hear that will be revived in 2022.
It's so, and in a way that it's so exciting. And I'm so happy, when I'm able to share the next stuff, I'm so excited to share with people what's coming, because I can't share yet, but big and it's happy and it's glorious and it's golden, and you all are welcome to be a part of it. And I'm really excited to share it with you.
Amazing.
You're amazing.
Thank you. Dayon, do you want to come back in?
Hey, Dayon.
Hi. I'm like dehydrated. I have like nothing. It's just so it's come out of all the.
But you have choreography.
She gives it to you even when she thinks she's not.
We are at time, and I think that's a good thing, because this has been such a generous night. And I want to release additional affirmations to Ryan and Vanessa, who have been so generous to us for 2022 and beyond. So to seeking the spaces and moments for stillness, for breathing, for building, for dreaming, for touching, for boundary making, and for loving. And I just thank you so much, both of you, immensely, for this night, for this time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank all of you out there for choosing to spend a portion of your night and your week with us. And if you enjoyed this program and want to ensure more like it can occur, please consider contributing to the Lea K. Green Memorial Fund. More information can be found on our website, and the link has been put in the chat box. Also check out Art House. Also check out what's happened in Mississippi. Don't sleep on the South, y'all.
Don't sleep on the South.
Sleep on the South.
Up to our ASL interpreter.
Thank you to Steno Captions, who has been doing captioning, as well as to our ASL interpreters tonight. I thank my team, Melania and Leon. I thank everyone at studio who made this possible, as well as the Green family. And I just wish you all a good night until 2022. Please continue to believe in the power of art and the power of love.
I want to say one other thing.
Yes, please.
I say special love to all of the teachers out there. And I want to say special love for your heart and for your strength and for your resilience, for going to work every day in a difficult time when our students are feeling very challenged. I lift up all of the teachers in this space, and I lift up all of the artists who are present. I am so grateful for your creativity, and I do so hope that you are feeling nourished in your life and in your practice. I lift you up, and I will continue to lift you up into this night and into the full moon, because you make the air that we will all breathe tomorrow. And I'm so grateful for our teachers and our artists, and for people who bring us together, like Ryan and Dayon and Thelma. And much love to Lea K. Green and to your family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
And we
night.
love you, Vanessa.
Yeah.
I love you too, Ryan, and love to your daughter. I'm so grateful that she's here, and I'm so grateful that you have each other.
Thank you. Thanks, Dayon.
Thank you.
Dayon, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.